Good afternoon. Thanks for watching. This is Now. You got Dylan and Jonathan right here in the H&N Digital Center. Want to get started with some breaking news.
Yeah, the first of two murder trials for the killing of Thelma Boinville has resumed, with the suspect Stephen Brown taking the stand. Here's what was said in court just a short time ago.
Was it your plan to go hurt anybody, or?
No, that's definitely not my plan.
Now, during the trial, prosecutors had said Boinville walked in on Brown and Haley Danduran while they were burglarizing a North Shore vacation rental in 2017, and that's when she was brutally killed. Here's how the defense is painting the picture today.
Haley came back and we're drinking, and next thing you know, we hear somebody coming from the front. And, I wanted to run, but me and Haley was like, wait, because whoever the person was, which later was Thelma, but, she was already approaching us, and so we were hid behind the stairs. And Haley still had the machete in her hand from when she was, scouting the house looking for stuff she wanted. And when Thelma came, Haley, walked out, and Thelma was saying something, and I walk out with Haley, and, she just kind of stops. She's like, she doesn't know what's going on. Kind of asks, like, who we were, and, she's like, you guys could just go. And Haley, next thing you know, Haley's like, told her to lay down, and I'm blocking her off from one side, and she's like, okay, and she goes to go lay down, and she lays down.
Was she cooperative at that point when you?
Yeah, she was Yeah, she was being cooperative. She just said, I have a daughter outside, and it was all kind of fast. Like, as soon as she came around the corner, we stepped out. And she was saying something to us, and then, Haley told her to lay down, told me grab the rope. I run over, I go grab the rope, and then I bring it back. Then she's like, start tying her up, so I start tying up her legs. Then I hand Haley the rope. She starts to tie up her hands, and Haley's like, go make sure no one else is here. And I was like, okay. So I go towards the garage.
How long were you watching in that area of the garage?
For like 10 minutes maybe. But so I'm watching, and I kind of creep around the garage to try to see, because I see that someone's in the truck, and I eventually see that it was Makana. And so I'm just watching for a while, and I didn't see anyone else. So eventually I go back to the garage door, I open it, I go back inside to go tell Haley what happened.
Okay, so when you went back inside, what happened?
That's when I walked back to Haley, and that's when Thelma had, she had been hurt already. There was blood around her, and I kind of walk over there, and I just start snapping at Haley. I was like, "What the did you do?" I thought, first off, I thought we were just gonna run in the first place, and then when I came back, I thought, that was gonna be the plan. We were just gonna run and get away. But when I came back, there was blood on her. I mean, there was blood on her, there was blood on Thelma, and there's blood on the ground. And I come over.
Was there blood on Haley too?
Yeah, there was.
Now again, Brown is on trial now, and Danduran will have a separate trial later. We'll have much more on this still very much developing story on later editions of H&N, and keep checking those H&N digital platforms for updates from the courtroom today.
We're learning more about a deadly stabbing in Hilo and the victims killed. We've learned they were business owners and well-respected in the community. Our Jelani Martinez has the story.
Police identified the victims as Jeffrey and Carla Takamine, both 68 years old. They were known for their kindness.
This is so sad and tragic. Many people in the community are very shocked at what occurred.
David Chiigi lives down the road from this home on Makalika Street in Panaeva, where Jeffrey and Carla Takamine were found stabbed to death just before 7 Monday morning. Police say the couple's grandson, 21-year-old Joshua Ho, was restrained by relatives. He's suspected of first-degree murder.
Other family members who don't live here also responded. So once the officers got here, there were quite a bit of people here.
Police say a 28-year-old man also suffered life-threatening lacerations and was treated at a hospital. Investigators spent the day searching the property and recovered this knife and a sock. The Takamines own the Big Island Delights gift shop in Hilo. It's now closed indefinitely.
They provided, quality candies, cookies, snacks, and It was a good business, but they gave so much back to the community.
Shiigi has known the couple for decades and says he'll always remember them for their generosity.
You know, I have a nursery business, and she went out of her way to help me when I used to go on trips and donate her products for me to share with people on the mainland. So, yeah, they were very kind.
Autopsies are scheduled to determine the exact cause of death. Jolani Martinez, Hawaii News Now.
A deadline to address the nation's debt limit is coming up this week as Congress searches for a solution. Karen Kaifa is in Washington with more.
Well, Dylan, spoiler alert, Congress isn't going to meet that deadline. But the message from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen to lawmakers was don't panic, but start planning. She said the Treasury Department is going to pursue what she described as extraordinary measures to make sure the U.S. has a little bit more breathing room here, probably taking us into early June. But the more the idea of a potential default on U.S. debt lingers, the more havoc it could wreak with the U.S. economy.
The debt ceiling will be the talk of Washington until lawmakers on Capitol Hill can compromise and take action. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen starting a clock for Congress to either raise or suspend the country's borrowing cap beyond the current $31.4 trillion or risk an unprecedented U.S. default. Yellen wrote lawmakers on Friday to say the U.S. will hit its debt limit on Thursday, but the Treasury Department will take measures to allow breathing room until at least June. The last time a political debate pushed the U.S. to a brink of default was 2011, and the chaos resulted in the first long-term credit rating downgrade in the nation's history.
To threaten to not pay America's debts would put all of us at risk.
But new House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has indicated he may take a hard line on a debt increase, likely to satisfy some conservatives at the heart of his bruising battle for the gavel.
Let's start paying this debt off and make sure the future generation has as many opportunities as we do.
If Congress can agree on an increase, experts say interest rates on everything from your credit card debt to auto loans to mortgages could skyrocket as it becomes more expensive for the U.S. to borrow. The stock market could tank, hammering retirement accounts. And the Treasury Department might decide to delay or temporarily halt payments like Social Security checks, Medicare disbursements, and military pay to cover debts. And while Washington isn't panicking just yet, the White House has recommended that an agreement come sooner rather than later to avoid rattling an already uncertain U.S. economy.
And right now, the White House says no concessions, no negotiations. This is something that Congress has done for decades, more often than not with bipartisan support. But very quietly, the Biden White House has anticipated and prepared for the idea that this could be a long showdown, and especially looking at the way the House Republican majority seems split among themselves. Dylan?
Karen, thank you so much for that report. We often hear about Congress debating government spending, which often brings us close to a government shutdown if they can't agree on a bill to fund things. But how is the debt ceiling debate different, and how do the outcomes differ?
Well, you'll certainly hear, Dylan, a number of politicians try to tie these two together. In fact, the Republicans who will be battling most likely with Kevin McCarthy over this topic are those who believe that the Congress should not consent to heighten the debt ceiling until there have been reductions in government spending. But you want to think of those government spending fights as talking about money that the U.S. government anticipates spending. It's like a budget. It's a proposal. And every year they go through that process of allocating how much money they believe should be spent on the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, etc. So that is money. When you think about it, think about making a budget for your own household at the beginning of the year. When it comes to this debt ceiling talk, this is money that the U.S. government has already spent. It's kind of like money you've already put on your credit card. You are obligated to pay that back, as the U.S. is obligated to pay back money they have borrowed. When you start to get toward that top of the debt ceiling, often Congress says, hey, okay, we are obligated to pay these debts. We do need to take it a little bit higher. But the question here will become, how much of a political fight do Republicans and Democrats want to have over this? Again, this is the U.S. economy that is at stake. And if they do reach that point of a default, it could put the U.S. economy in a good deal of jeopardy at a time when things are already uncertain. We saw the U.S. get pretty close to the brink of a default back in 2011. It wreaked havoc with the stock market, and it also put a dent in consumer confidence, making a lot of consumers a little bit wary about their own spending, which, of course, in turn has a negative effect on the economy, Dylan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen. In your report, you mentioned that the U.S. has never defaulted on its debt. And so because of that, we don't know the full scope of exactly what would happen. What are economists saying or projecting the consequences would look like both short term and long term?
Well, most economists will tell you you do not want to see the consequences of potential default on U.S. debt. We came close in 2011, and the stock market did not like what happened, and it had a rattling effect on the global markets as well. Potentially what could happen was if the U.S. had problems paying its debts, it would make other investors less likely to let the U.S. borrow money, and that in turn for consumers would make interest rates on things like home loans, mortgages, car loans, your credit card debt, those interest rates go up at a time when the Federal Reserve is already trying to use interest rate mechanisms in a more controlled way to curb U.S. inflation. The other thing that could happen is when the stock market goes down, that impacts retirement accounts. So that's another consequence. And also, as the U.S. would get closer to this deadline that Janet Yellen has kind of put out, that absolute deadline of early June, which could also fluctuate, the Treasury Department has to start to think about what to pay out and where to get some money to kind of shuffle things around. That could potentially lead to the idea of maybe Social Security payments not being paid out for a certain period of time, Medicare reimbursements not being paid out for a certain period of time, while the U.S. really tries to get a handle on how they make things work. So certainly some really devastating consequences, again, if the Congress cannot come to an agreement. Hopefully it's something that they will work on over the next few weeks or so, and we won't get close to that default, and certainly hopefully not over the edge, Dylan.
A lot to keep an eye on here. Karen Kafa in Washington, thank you so much for joining us here on This Is Now.
Now we have to get to a first alert to some potentially heavy rain and some big surf rolling in. Here's Guy Hoggy.
A small boost tomorrow, and then on Friday they got another swell coming in starting early Friday morning, and that's going to be below advisory levels. This is the swell we got to be worried about. Maybe it could be good enough and big enough for the eddy. It's definitely going to be big enough. We'll see if the winds are favorable, and at this point Surfline says the winds will be good for it. And then beyond that, another one coming in on Wednesday, so the North Shore wave machine is in full swing. We've got an upper level disturbance coming in Thursday, increasing showers for Kauai and Oahu, right? And then another front coming in over the weekend. That weekend front could bring scattered showers through Sunday, maybe even into Monday, as for some parts of Tuesday. So get those umbrellas out for that upper level disturbance starting on Thursday, especially for Kauai and Oahu. We could even get some thunderstorms. We're going to get hazy skies as well with those variable winds. And then again, over the weekend, that front drops in with more scattered showers. Some could be briefly heavy.
New at noon, Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke just unveiled her plan to expand access to preschool. Here's some of what she had to say at a press event a short time ago.
It's not just that we need to build preschools. It's just as important that we build out the workforce. And that's why it's important to have the partnership of the University of Hawaii, partners like Chaminade, partners like HPU. So what the University of Hawaii has committed to do is building preschool classroom, a functioning preschool classroom at every campus. This will not only provide preschool services, it will also be a teaching pathway to bring out and teach and educate more teachers for the next several years.
Now, we're told this is going to be a public-private plan to create 465 classrooms. Luke hopes that this will allow all eligible children to have preschool access by 2032. We'll have much more on this plan coming up on later editions of HNN.
A controversial culinary ingredient may be making a comeback. MSG. Once widely used, the seasoning was once shunned over perceived health conception, but now new research could be saying otherwise. Michael George has more.
At this Arlington, Virginia takeout restaurant, Lucky Danger, Chef Tim Ma's secret ingredient isn't really a secret.
MSG, it's very little.
It's a seasoning with a controversial history. Many Americans grew up hearing it's unhealthy or even dangerous to consume. But now some, like Ma, are challenging that idea.
I will say, I think
Every dish has it in there. We actually sit it here on the wok station because it is the last component of every dish that goes out.
Chef and author J. Kenji Lopez-Alt says the safety of MSG, or monosodium glutamate, first came into question in 1968 when a doctor wrote a letter to the New England Journal of Medicine titled Chinese Restaurant Syndrome.
This wasn't a published study. It was a letter written to the journal by a doctor saying, hey, I've noticed when I go to Chinese restaurants and eat MSG-rich foods, I get these certain symptoms.
After others reported similar symptoms, an MSG backlash began.
The whole idea has some racist undertones as well.
Some people still claim to experience symptoms such as headaches or drowsiness after eating foods containing MSG. But recent scientific research shows that when consumed in moderation, MSG is harmless. While MSG is often associated with Asian cuisine, it's long been an ingredient in American foods, from Campbell's soups and Heinz ketchup to KFC and Chick-fil-A.
You never hear somebody say, I have Doritos syndrome or KFC syndrome.
You don't hear about it as like a specific term the way Chinese restaurant syndrome is.
The ingredient is now seeing a comeback, even in some unusual ways.
All right, so this first one is just going to be a regular.
Lopez-Alt showed us how MSG can be used in cocktails. He set up this taste test.
Oh, this is different. I'm going to guess that this is the one with MSG in it?
Correct.
I get that savory flavor you were talking about.
Back at Lucky Danger, Ma's slogan is American Chinese by a Chinese American.
Some people would say it might just be easier for you to avoid the whole thing and not use MSG.
But then the food won't be as good. It's a very necessary ingredient for us.
Michael George, CBS News, New York.
Never knew that history behind that.
Yeah, that's interesting for
I know.
sure.
I definitely grew up thinking bad, but definitely new insight there. All right, thank you, Michael George. Let's get to some news that the internet is talking about today, and this is a big one for me because I am a fan. Madonna has announced a global tour. It's tied to the 40th anniversary of her first studio album, 40 years. Yeah, that's hard to believe. The Material Girl scrubbed her Instagram over the weekend, indicating that there was going to be some sort of big news. That's when we learned of this global tour. According to Madonna's website, the Celebration Tour will include 4 decades of hits. Very cool. This is all about my time, Dylan. I know.
Well, I am well aware she is still an icon after all these years.
Yeah.
So, Madonna.
35 cities.
Amazing.
It's going to be kicking off July 15th in Vancouver. It will include stops in Detroit, Chicago, New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. Tickets go on sale Friday, but pre-sale is underway if you have a special bank card with Citi, and they're very expensive.
Unfortunately, none of those cities in Oahu, I presume, right?
Maybe we can talk her into it. Please, Madonna.
Yes, let's shift gears now to the history of the Corvette. Exactly 70 years after the very first Chevrolet Corvette was unveiled, General Motors is rolling out the first ever hybrid Corvette called the E-Ray. The car's front wheels use an electric motor and the back wheels rely on a gasoline engine. The E-Ray is also GM's fastest accelerating Corvette model ever. It has, get this, 655 horsepower and can go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 2.5 seconds. The Corvette E-Ray is not a plug-in hybrid. Its battery pack is mounted between the two seats and is charged as the Corvette slows and brakes, and at times while the car drives. How much would you pay for that, Jonathan?
$60,000.
Oh, you're gonna have to up your budget a little bit.
I figured. I wouldn't pay that, by the way, either. That's my guess.
The starting price for it, $104,000, but it's not for sale yet. It'll open to sales later this year.
Just imagine how cool I could be, Dylan. Just riding around in that car, cruising around, listening to the Immaculate Collection by Madonna in my Corvette, and just cruising up to that concert.
You're living your best fantasy right now.
Truly a fantasy, because I could not afford the Madonna tour or the Corvette. Never going to happen.
Just imagine that Corvette stuck in traffic on the H1 at 5 o'clock. All that horsepower for nothing. You go at a speed of 2 miles an hour.
As long as I had the music. It brings the people together.
It sure does. Yeah. Well, if you don't have money for that, maybe you have money for this. A basketball jersey worn by NBA legend is going up for auction, and it's expected to fetch, okay, well, maybe you don't have the money for it. It's expected to fetch $7 million. Kobe Bryant wore this jersey more than 25 times. $7 million. Yeah, he wore it more than 25 times.
How many Corvettes is that? Sorry.
Several Corvettes. He wore this many times during the 2007 to 2008 season. Auction house Sotheby's says the late Lakers star scored more than 600 points wearing the jersey and is the only MVP season in his career. I love auctions, obviously. Sought after sports memorabilia, always highly prized.
Yeah, classic jersey there too. All right, so let's get to some good news now, some good entertainment news now. Titanic fan.
Yes,
you are?
Definitely.
Okay. Well, listen up, because Jeannie Mose has a story for us. People are recreating a classic moment from the movie to disprove this theory. Here she is with this report.
Take a deep breath when I say. It's the unsinking of the Titanic. Time to coincide with the movie's 25th anniversary. The film's director is trying to finally slam the door on that age-old question about the door. Jack! Did Rose hog it when Jack could have fit? Room on that door for a family of 4, argue critics, adding pooches to prove the point. But now Nat Geo presents a scientific reenactment. Jack! Using stunt doubles plastered with sensors floundering in cold water, this is the teaser. They consulted an expert on hypothermia. Within 8 minutes, Jack would have been unconscious in that position. And by the way, director James Cameron told reporters it's technically not a door. It's a piece of paneling from the first-class lounge. Yeah, well, whatever it was, it's been put to the test before.
I think Jack's death was needless.
Mythbusters determined that if only they'd tied Rose's life jacket underneath the wood, the additional buoyancy could have supported them both. But director Cameron was unmoved.
He has to die. The dude's going down.
Cameron compares it to Romeo and Juliet.
In the famous line, you say, "I'll never let you go, Jack."
I'll never let go. I promise.
But you do.
I lied. This is one movie controversy that just won't sink. Colbert and Kate Winslet.
Come on, darling, there's room for 2.
Have already done their own reenactment, and no lifeboats were needed. All hands on desk.
Yes!
Jeannie Mose, CNN, New York.
Oh my goodness.
Goodness is right.
What a riot that
you
was.
gotta love Jeannie Mose. So you know the iconic line, "I'll never let go."
Yes.
Yes, okay, so that's a very iconic line, but there's a more of an iconic line. Can you think of it? Jack says it.
No.
King of the world! So get this, I'm reading Titanic facts right here because we have a little time to fill. And that was improvised.
Was it really?
Yeah, and they ended up putting it in the movie. He was just having fun. They improvised that
wow.
line. Also, what else can I tell you in the next 30 seconds?
Well, while you look for that fact, I think if this was going to be so controversial, he could have just used a smaller door for the movie. I mean, they would have put to rest all of this.
Well,
but
here's
it's too late
one
now.
more fact about that water. It wasn't cold at all.
I knew that one.
The tank was 80 degrees.
Yeah, all movie magic.
Yeah, all movie magic. All sorts of Titanic facts out there on the interweb. Gonna have to rewatch that movie. It's been a while for me. It used to be a tradition. Haven't seen it in a while.
It's a great one.
All
Makes
right.
me cry every time.
I'll never let go, but wait, I will because the show's over. Bye. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Aloha,
Thanks for
guys.
watching This Is Now.